Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following. Indiana University's Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, presenting Security Matters, with tips for improving online security in 3 minutes or less.
Smithville Fiber, the Gigacity Company, fiber internet, HD, and digital IPTV in southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. Considered one of the largest and most abrupt relocations in U.S. history, more than 1 million fled Louisiana following Hurricane Katrina. Many never returned.
I remember calling my daddy. I was like, Daddy, I moved to Indiana. Indiana? Where is that? I said, I don't know, Daddy. It's a few states up.
With roots still in New Orleans, families that call Indiana home continue to struggle with the past and the mark Katrina left on their lives. Should the Notre Dame Police Department have to turn over police records tied to its student athletes?
We don't have a tradition of secret police in this country, and that's effectively what we have here if this ruling is allowed to stand.
ESPN is seeking the records, and the company has the backing of Indiana's Attorney General as it appeals the judge's ruling. More on these stories, plus the latest news headlines from around the state, right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. In the Gulf Coast area, more than 1 million people were displaced by Hurricane Katrina. Every state in the union established a relief operation. Indiana, like so many other states, welcomed refugees. In those days, weeks, and months after the storm, thousands of people relocated to Indiana. Some chose to make this their home, and 10 years later, they have lives here. But as Sarah Whitmire reports, their ties to New Orleans remain strong, and their vivid memories of the storm really don't seem to fade with the passage of time.
The Johnsons are happy, tossing a football and laughing on a Saturday afternoon.
Good job, Kenny.
Cody and his wife Chastity bought this house in 2012. And they've lived in Indiana for almost a decade now. But still, it's difficult to call this home.
It's still like, even when I say, I live in Indiana, that sounds funny coming out of my mouth like I live in Indiana.
Born and raised in New Orleans, the couple never considered leaving. Bourbon Street, Mardi Gras, spicy Cajun food, and Zydeco music. That was life.
That's 2004, right after the birth of my son, and that's the house that we lived in.
No one could imagine what was to come. A powerful storm that would separate Chastity from her infant son for months.
Growing up my whole life, we always was taught New Orleans was below sea level, and we was never going to be able to survive anything over a Category 3 hurricane.
On August 29th, Hurricane Katrina, a powerful Category 5 hurricane, barreled down on the city of New Orleans.
I really don't talk about it. I really never talked about it. It is something that you don't want to talk about. So some things I really I forgot till just now. You kind of, have a mental block, try to block things out in your head.
Cody went with his family and the couple's infant son. Chastity got lost in the confusion as folks lined up to find shelter.
And as soon as daylight happened, we was like, okay, we have to get out.
She and a friend siphoned gas out of abandoned cars and made their way to Baton Rouge. She found herself in a makeshift shelter at a high school for a few days, then a more permanent shelter at an old military base for 3 months.
3 months don't sound like a long time, but when you have a baby, 3 months is a huge difference.
Chastity, Cody, and their infant son reconnected at the shelter.
When I had him, he was barely trying to learn how to stand up, and when I saw him, he was walking. So, it was just some things that I missed, like his first steps, or I guess like the first word. There was certain things. It was just crazy.
Buses would come by the shelter offering to take people to different states to come live rent-free for a few months while people got back on their feet. Chastity and Cody watched as evacuees boarded buses to Ohio, Kentucky, and then one day,
I was laying on a cot and he was like, Indiana coming, you want to go to Indiana? I was like, let's go to Indiana. And like he would say, I was just ready. I was just ready to, just ready to go. So when they showed us the apartment and, we could get an apartment and we could get help, the only thing I was thinking of, I get to take a bath. So we got on the bus and we left.
I didn't know nobody in Indiana. I didn't know nothing about Indiana but Indy 500 and the coast. That's it. That's all I know. But I was just tired of being in that environment.
I'm not sure if you could see it, but that is the shelter that we lived in after Katrina. And this is the day that we got on a bus to leave to come to Indiana. So we just kind of took a picture with everybody and we just pretty much, we was preparing to leave. I remember calling my daddy. I was like, Daddy, I moved to Indiana. Indiana? Where is that? I said, I don't know, Daddy. It's a few states up.
Katrina refugees started arriving in Indiana a couple days after the storm.
We had chairs lining up all the way up and down the hall of folks who needed Red Cross assistance.
Ann Gregson says it was like nothing the Red Cross had ever dealt with. Typically, the Red Cross raises money or sends volunteers to a devastated area. But in this case, there were thousands of displaced people who weren't from Indiana, had no connection to Indiana, but they needed help.
You're walking down the hall or outside, and you're meeting people from New Orleans or Pascagoula, all sorts of places, and just being empathetic to them in this situation, and fleeing their homes and needing somebody to be there for them.
Hundreds of Indiana residents turned out to help, and some refugees started volunteering even as they were handling their own situations. Larsina Hicks and her family had recently evacuated to Indianapolis from New Orleans when she started working at Volunteers of America.
We were going through the process of rebuilding and trying to figure out our next steps while I was helping someone else in the same situation. It was a crazy time.
But it helped Hicks deal with 100 different emotions by being around people who were in the same situation. All told, the Indiana Red Cross helped more than 3,000 Katrina refugees. In the majority of cases, it was temporary assistance until people could get back on their feet and figure out what to do next. Today, 10 years after the storm, the Red Cross doesn't know how many New Orleans transplants are still here, but Ann Gregson estimates it's probably just a handful. The Johnsons have a mortgage here now, and Chastity's mom moved up from New Orleans earlier this year. When they retire, they'll likely move south, but probably not back to the Crescent City.
Some things have gotten up and some things up and running, but I don't think that would ever feel like home like it used to.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Sarah Whitmire.
Chastity and Cody do make it back to visit New Orleans quite a bit. All of Cody's family is still there, and even though Chastity's mom is here, she still has a lot of family there too. The population in New Orleans is slowly rebounding. Katrina initially decreased it by more than a half. Before the storm, it was more than 490,000. It fell to 230,000 a year later. In 2014, though, the city once again showed up on the list of the nation's most populous cities. It ranked number 50 at just more than 384,000. And now for headlines, we go over to Barbara Brosier, who has the latest on this week's top stories.
Thanks, Joe. The Environmental Protection Agency's new rules clarifying which waterways it will regulate went into effect today, even though they won't take effect in more than a dozen other states. Under the Clean Water Act, the EPA has been regulating navigable waterways. Now it will also regulate tributaries. A judge issued an injunction yesterday halting the ruling in 13 states, but not in Indiana. The Indiana Farm Bureau says that means farmers could be required to get permits for ditches on their properties, even though many farmers already take precautions to mitigate water pollution.
Actually, Indiana is one of the leading states for farmers implementing those voluntary practices, and it seems to us that the EPA has not paid any attention to that.
Environmentalists argue regulating the waterways are imperative to keeping the nation's waters clean, especially because the EPA says agriculture runoff is the largest water polluter. Indiana and several other states filed a lawsuit in July asking the courts to overturn the rules. Indiana's Attorney General says he will move ahead with the lawsuit as planned. The Indiana State Department of Health is starting a nonprofit group aimed at improving Hoosier health. The legislature established the Healthy Hoosiers Foundation to help the Department of Health reduce Indiana's rate of infant mortality, obesity, and smoking. The group will also raise money for other health needs the state identifies. Critics say the state legislature should be allocating more money to public health, but the State Department of Health director disputes that claim.
It's not an indication at all that we aren't allocating enough through the legislature. We always know we need more help.
Adams says the benefit of having a nonprofit, in addition to regular state funding, is that individuals or organizations can donate to fund specific causes or regions. Arguments the Indiana Supreme Court heard this week will determine the future of the state's personalized license plate program. The ACLU argues the Bureau of Motor Vehicles policy, determining what messages can go on its license plates, is too vague and violates free speech rights. The lawsuit started after the Bureau of Motor Vehicles denied a Greenfield police officer a custom license plate that read "Oink," stating it was inappropriate. Testifying this week, Indiana's Solicitor General said the government should have final authority over what goes on its plates. The state Supreme Court justices did not announce a timetable for their ruling. There's still no date for when I-65 might reopen. A stretch of more than 30 miles long between Lafayette and Lebanon has been closed for most of the month. This comes at a time when the state is in the middle of a 2-year study looking at ways to fund its roads and bridges, and when Congress is working to craft a long-term transportation funding bill.
We have a good opportunity this fall to do a long-term highway bill, and we're going to have to find revenue to do that, but tax reform right now looks like that is a good possibility. That would be multinational tax reform. Doesn't increase taxes on our citizens in our state, and potentially could create more revenue to get a good federal highway bill long term.
Federal funds make up a little more than half of Indiana's $1.8 billion transportation budget. As we've reported, the Federal Highway Trust Fund has been underfunded for years. And in July, Congress delayed passing a long-term solution. The short-term bill shores up the fund through mid-December. State lawmakers boosted funding for roads and bridges in 2013 by $200 million, but kept it flat in the most recent budget lawmakers approved this spring. House Speaker Brian Bosma has said infrastructure will be the focus of the next 2 legislative sessions. Indiana firefighters are being called upon for help in 5 western states to battle wildfires. Crews and fire trucks are being sent on 2-week rotations to combat the fire. So are other Forest Service personnel who help with environmental or financial issues.
That reduces the amount of personnel that we have here. We tend to bank on it most years. We know people are going to be out for a certain extent, but when we get very, very busy years like this year, it has more of an impact than we necessarily were planning for at the start of the year.
This year's fire season started later than normal and most likely won't end until snow or heavy rain arrives. State legislators are wrestling with whether footage captured by police body cameras should be made public. Indiana law doesn't provide specific direction as to whether police body cam footage should be available to the public, but it does have what's called an investigatory record exception, meaning that law enforcement can indefinitely withhold information if it's involved in an investigation, even after that investigation is over. At a hearing this week, a woman whose husband was shot and killed by Indianapolis police in April testified she's frustrated that only portions of body cam footage of the incident have been released.
My husband is gone. The mistakes that he made, he will never be able to stand up and say, okay, I didn't do this. This didn't happen the way that you all say that it happened. He can't do that. It's up to me. All I'm asking for is the video.
Some law enforcement warn against broad public access to body cam video, though. They say if it is public, some victims of crime might be less willing to cooperate with authorities for fear of having their privacy violated. Indiana University President Michael McRobbie is displeased with the behavior of some Hoosier athletes. The most recent transgression was by IU men's basketball players Emmett Holt and Thomas Bryant, who were cited for illegal alcohol possession last weekend. McRobbie called the incident an embarrassment and a complete distraction from IU's primary role as an educational institution. Gas prices are on the decline after a short spike that was caused by an unexpected shutdown of an Indiana refinery. The BP refinery, located in Whiting, Indiana, is now up and operational again. Average gas prices are now around $2.50. And more than 907,000 people visited the Indiana State Fair this year. That's the 5th highest attendance since it started in 1852. 4 days of the fair had at least 70,000 attendees. And Joe, I didn't make it this year to go get a corn dog. That's my one splurge every fair season.
What happened? I didn't go either. It goes by so fast.
It does, and summer is really busy. Next year.
Thanks, Barbara. Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. Notre Dame is refusing to release police records tied to its student athletes. A judge has ruled that the school's right. The case is being appealed, though, and Indiana's Attorney General is weighing in. And an artist who lost her home in Hurricane Katrina now calls Bloomington home. Ahead, how the storm inspires her artwork. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
I can change the world with my own 2 hands, make it a better place with my own 2 hands. I'm gonna make it a brighter place with my own 2 hands. I'm gonna help the human race with my own 2 hands. I can hold you in my own 2 hands, and I can comfort you with my own 2 hands, with my own 2 hands.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. Should private universities have to release campus police records to the public? That's a question at the center of a lawsuit between ESPN and the University of Notre Dame. My colleague Barbara Brosier joins us again. Barbara, will this impact other universities than just Notre Dame?
Well, it could have a huge impact on all of Indiana's private universities. The court's decision will apply to any of those institutions that, like Notre Dame, have their own police forces. They're on college campuses across the country. Police who have the power to cite and arrest students. ESPN wanted to know more about how those police interact with athletes for an Outside the Lines report. So it requested records from several colleges, including the University of Notre Dame. But Notre Dame denied the request. The university argued it's a private institution, so the school's police department isn't subject to public records laws. In response, ESPN filed a complaint with Indiana's public access counselor. In an October advisory opinion, Indiana public access counselor Luke Britt put the university on notice, saying from that point forward, the Notre Dame Security Police would be considered a public law enforcement agency and subject to public records requests. In his opinion, he wrote, "I am not comfortable saying an organization can hide behind the cloak of secrecy when they have the power to arrest and create criminal records and exercise the state's police powers." Despite the public access counselor's opinion, Notre Dame still refused to hand over any records. So in January, ESPN took its fight to court.
In April, the St. Joseph County Superior Court judge ruled in favor of the university, ruling that the university should not be, their police department should not be considered a public agency, and therefore they're not subject to public records disclosure laws.
Reporter Jeff Parrott has been covering the case for the South Bend Tribune, a local newspaper that has also tried unsuccessfully to obtain police records from Notre Dame. Parrott says ESPN is appealing the court's decision and fighting for the same access to records they receive from other police departments.
Under public records laws, any other police department has to disclose to the public basic information about an incident that an officer responds to. What happened, where it happened, when it happened, who were the principal parties involved, and what was the alleged crime that might have occurred.
Indiana Attorney General Greg Zeller recently weighed in on the case, filing a friend of the court brief. In it, he sides with ESPN.
The state's policy is that the authority granted to a police officer is really at the heart of public trust. So we need transparency and openness when it comes to the use of that police power, whether it's a private use, which we've granted to Notre Dame and other private institutions, or whether it's the police that you see every day on the streets. But I think to maintain public trust in that system, there needs to be transparency, and that's why we filed our brief.
Jerry Lenoska is the president of the Indiana Coalition for Open Government and an associate professor at Indiana University's Media School. He says he's encouraged by the Attorney General's involvement.
It's great to see the Attorney General weigh in this case. I'm not sure that office has done anything like this in an access case before, so it's good to have that highest law enforcement official of the state weigh in on the side of public access.
Lenoska says while Notre Dame is a private institution, the exercise of police power is one of the fundamental powers of state government and should be subject to public scrutiny.
There's a real overarching public interest here, I think, in following the affairs of government, and particularly when it comes to police powers. We don't have secret police who can make secret arrests and turn people over to secret courts. That is explicitly not the way that our country has been set up.
Whatever the courts decide in the Notre Dame case, the ruling has the potential to change the relationships between many of Indiana's private university police departments and the public.
It would apply to any private university that has a security police department. There's one at Butler University, there's one at Valparaiso University, so it's not just confined to the Notre Dame community.
Both the University of Notre Dame and ESPN say they cannot comment on pending litigation.
And Barbara, is Notre Dame the only university that wouldn't give out records?
Well, Joe, it's the only university that outright refused, but ESPN did also file a lawsuit against Michigan State University. MSU handed over the records, but they were redacted. They didn't have the athletes' names in the records. So the Michigan Court of Appeals recently ruled in ESPN's favor in that case.
Okay, thank you very much, Barbara. The memories of Hurricane Katrina haunt many of the refugees who lived through the storm. Before we leave, we want to introduce you to Abby Gitlitz. She's an artist from Indiana, but she had moved to New Orleans in 2004 to run a glass studio. She was in Maine at a glass-blowing camp when Katrina struck.
I had 5 t-shirts, 2 pairs of shorts, and a pair of sneakers. And that was it. That was all I had with me. And they weren't nice shirts because I was blowing glass. So my freak out after the hurricane involved me realizing I didn't have pants, which seems silly, but think of a time since you have a conscious thought that you did not own pants. It's never happened to most of us. And I just went around freaking out going, I don't have pants, I don't have any pants. And people would say, Abby, we can buy you pants. Like, no, you don't understand. It's a metaphor.
Gitlitz moved around a lot before coming back to Indiana. She has an exhibit opening this fall in Bloomington that draws from her experience as a Hurricane Katrina refugee.
I'm not interested in making art that makes people deeply look at man's inhumanity to man or things like that. Some people came away from Katrina feeling the need to have people be introspective. And I came away feeling the need to make my art give people joy.
Each piece is a teapot and a teacup, illustrating the give-and-take relationship and the imbalance in the relationship when someone is a refugee.
I'm very aware of you enjoy the moment you have, you relish the things around you, and enjoy them fully because they might not last. Do that not with an attitude of sadness, but do that with an attitude of joy. We get this right now, and it doesn't get better than this moment. And I would say that is in my art.
Abby's show opens October 2nd at the John Waldron Arts Center in Bloomington. And before we say goodbye tonight, a word about the shooting in Roanoke, Virginia, where 2 journalists were gunned down live on air. In news, we try not to get emotional, not to react, but the events that unfolded this week were hard to watch. Our thoughts and prayers tonight to the family and friends of Allison Parker and Adam Ward, and to the entire team at WDBJ. And of course, Barbara, very sad news, very hard to watch, and we try not to take it personal, not really an attack on news, but it's still really hard.
Very hard, and they did an impeccable job covering a tragedy of their own at that station.
And that's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following: Indiana University's Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, presenting Security Matters, with tips for improving online security in 3 minutes or less.
Smithville Fiber, the Gigacity Company, fiber internet, HD, and digital IPTV in southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.